and welcome to Level Up and Friends, where every week those of us from the store, Level Up Entertainment, gather a group of friends and we just talk about various things we are interested in. This week we're talking Super Nintendo, our experiences with the system. We're going to talk about some of our favorite games and probably give you some suggestions of some games we consider underrated. I am your host this week, Scott, and with me I have...
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
I'm one of the owners of Level Up Entertainment. I know a lot about Super Nintendo because that was what I did for most of my childhood.
It's true.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Greg. I'm the other owner of Level Up Entertainment, and I grew up also with Super Nintendo, even though I had a Nintendo, and that was my first experience with gaming.
Ladies first.
Okay, I'm Katie. I'm actually a former employee of Level Up Entertainment many moons ago, and a friend of the store.
And I'm Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Everybody, he needs no introduction.
Yeah. No, everyone knows.
HR, new Tim.
Yeah.
You might know Joe from the baseball episode.
Yes.
Level Up Friends podcast.
We're going to talk about baseball here.
Yeah, I heard that one was
I
trending.
mean, we
Yeah.
could.
And
I really could.
I know we're going to get off on the subject, but Joe, I was actually thinking about bringing up a Baseball Simulator 1.00 because that's one of my favorite games too for Super Nintendo, but I decided not to.
Well, let's
Just
get
roll.
into it a little bit, guys. So I'm going to preface this. The one Nintendo console I skipped growing up was the Super Nintendo. I got a Sega Genesis instead.
Oh, man.
So
Sega does, but Nintendo.
So my experiences with this console are completely as an adult and not connected to nostalgia. Not entirely, because a bunch of my friends that have Super Nintendo, so I would go play like Street Fighter and Mario at their house. But I did not grow up with one.
It's kind of funny, Scott, because like you really don't like sports, and Genesis had the best sports games.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But
Good games too.
I couldn't play
that's
Sonic the Hedgehog. That was the tipping point for me. I had to play that game.
So, Scott, why you bring that up? It's so funny because before we started for real, I was talking about having written out a bunch of notes, and one of the things I wanted to write about was like the FOMO of getting a Super Nintendo as a child, where you're like, I can't play Sonic though.
Yeah.
Oh man, and
Yeah.
I remember being like my mom asking me specifically that Christmas, leading up to it, which one did I want, Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis? And she had already bought a Super Nintendo, so it was really a moot point. But I remember agonizing over it and being like, you know that Larry David gif where he's like, I never felt like I was solid about it. But looking back, I'm glad I went with the Super Nintendo.
As a kid, I never wanted a Genesis. I was definitely a Genesis stinks, boo. But as I got,
I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of glad I did that because a lot of the Super Nintendo games I really like now I would not have been into as a kid. All of the RPGs I would not have had the patience for.
that's all I played.
Yeah,
All I
that's a
played
good
on
point, though.
weekends.
And I would say Super Nintendo, I mean, I guess I can't say that because PlayStation 2 exists, but it might have the best collection of RPGs, I think, for a console.
There's a ton of underrated and ones that it's hard to find. I can go through those later if you want to.
Yeah,
I
there's
was gonna say, Scott, honestly, the other thing you lucked out on, the games you're into now, would have cost you a fortune back then, right? The RPGs and a lot of the bigger games for the Super Nintendo were
Chrono Trigger cost me $90.
$90, yeah.
yeah,
$90.
I remember Earthbound being in this huge box as it came with the manual and stuff, and I think that was at least $80 too.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up paying a lot more for my copy of that because I got it way after the fact.
It's funny you talk about the RPGs because I definitely, the one thing I was super jealous of, I really wanted to play Phantasy Star as a kid. After I got into my played all my RPGs on Super Nintendo, I really wanted to play Phantasy Star, and I still have never played Phantasy Star.
This is going to turn into a Sega Genesis podcast.
Well, to let people know how the sausage is made a little bit, there's probably I'll circle back and do probably another episode on Super Nintendo with some other guests at another point. But eventually, we will hit all of the major retro consoles, and Sega Genesis is on my list because that is one I have nostalgia for. And I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. But with that, you guys want to get into talking about some of our favorite games here?
Sure.
Well, I was gonna say maybe we should give like a little bit of background about what the system was and like how it followed.
Sure, if you want to let us know about that.
Well, it was something I wanted to talk about because I thought that for me the system really embodied the name in a way that Nintendo has kind of tried to do ever since and never really succeeded. With the idea of a Super Nintendo, everything about the system felt like the original Nintendo, but better. You know, from the controller, it was kind of similar, but it had more buttons. You know, the graphics were like much better, but it's still, you know, like recognizable Mario's Mario, that kind of thing. And I remember it being like the hype around the release of the Super Nintendo was one of the earliest memories I have of those. You know how the news would like pick up on nerdy stuff once in a while, and they would do the report where they would go into stores and they were like, "The latest Nintendo has hit the shelves, and people are going crazy. There have been lines." You know what I mean? Like they would do that.
I remember seeing lots of stuff where like moms are like, "Oh, we just got them this thing, and now we have to buy another thing."
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think Super Nintendo, like this, and to an extent, like the just the 16-bit generation in general. I mean, I guess because I was a little bit older and a little bit more aware of like marketing, but I really distinctly remember a lot more of the marketing for this era. That was also when we like really cranked up like the 90s toot and like gross out type stuff. Like remember, was it for Kurt? No, it was for I think it was for Yoshi's Island where like the fat dude at the restaurant like eats so much he explodes.
Yeah.
What's that have to do with Yoshi's Island where you have a baby on your back and like?
Yeah, it's like Monty Python's Meaning of Life scene. Yeah. But for Yoshi's Island, I forgot about that commercial. That was amazing.
There was that Kirby one for was it Kirby Superstar where all the kids turn like round and it's like an epidemic at the hospital. Again, it's got nothing to do with Kirby.
There were a lot of them. The Final Fantasy III commercial had Mog murdering like just like blowing up monsters like in a really sinister way.
Any of these.
And the Earthbound stuff had like scratch and sniffs, like magazine ads. It was really.
I was just gonna mention the Earthbound stuff. I remember that specifically, and it was like the marketing didn't work because, especially for Earthbound, because everything was disgusting. Like I remember that being like the moniker.
Well, the tagline was literally "This game stinks."
Yes,
that's the one they went with.
That's it.
Sell a game.
And I was like, how the hell are you gonna sell a game like that? Like,
I can't believe people didn't want to buy that.
I mean, it'd be one thing if it was Booger Man and they were doing it like that.
They spent all their money on Bubsy and said, "This game stinks. I don't want it."
But it really like.
Just to circle back for a second, talking about like the release. I mean, I remember very vividly when I got my Super Nintendo on probably the first night of Hanukkah, if I remember correctly, because I knew what the box looked like and everything. So
oh yeah.
What's good about getting that the first night is you can get games the next bunch of nights.
I only got well. Did Mario World come with it? Right? It came
I think Mario World was a pack-in originally.
Oh yeah, so I might have gotten a game with it too, but I think I only got the Mario. But I remember playing that game, and I remember thinking to myself, you know, how old was it? Oh, it came out in what
91.
So I was 12, 13, something like that.
Oh, I was 6.
Yeah, 12, whatever. But I remember like thinking to myself, how can graphics get better than this? How like this looks so beautiful, like.
Yeah, it was mind blowing.
No way, graphics can look better.
So
no way, no how.
Yeah, compare Mario World to Super Mario Brothers, like it's amazing. Like
that was really one of my first experiences of like the same but better. You know, it was like, oh my god, this is so much better than the last one. You know, it was such a leap forward, and that's something that video games did like a couple times. It almost set the precedent. Well, it did, right? Because this was the first huge leap. And there was Atari to Nintendo, but I felt like Nintendo was more of a reboot than, you know, the next iteration. And then they one-upped it with the 16-bit era. And then 32-bit era was, oh, now it's in 3D and it's so much more extreme. And they, you know, we kind of like got to a point where it stopped being that big of a like Nintendo to Super Nintendo. Oh my God, this is a completely different game kind of thing.
Yeah, you look at like some of the PS5 like games are coming out, like it's like they look beautiful, but it's also like they're marginally better looking. They're better frames per second and stuff like that. But like just the look of the game, it's like okay, like I see a difference, but it's not like Nintendo to Super Nintendo or Super Nintendo to N64.
Right. It's not revolutionary.
But also too, I would also say that I think you can go back and like it's not as bad, but like I think N64 era games, like they had not aged well. Like graphically, they look like dirt. Most of them, like
They look awful.
PS1 look like dirt.
Well, I would say, yeah, that's the whole 32-bit era, because I think
Yeah, like the ones that are the polygons, like the ones that are sprites, you know, because
Right.
like I mean, like Marvel's Capcom on Saturn was amazing looking. You know, there's some games that look really nice, but like all the polygon stuff, it just doesn't age well, and like from there, and even PS2 games like
right now.
Oh my god.
I remember when I thought it couldn't look more real than GoldenEye.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Yeah. But
I remember
The 4-poly hand.
yeah.
yeah.
But that's a really good point. That's something that the Super Nintendo has benefited from. You know, looking back at it, it has aged really well graphically. Like if you boot up a game on the Super Nintendo now, if it was one of the top tier like best games, it's just as entrancing. Like it's an aesthetic and fidelity that people still aim for, like that 8-bit, 16-bit retro.
You look at all those
style.
All those indie games. I'm putting air
Right.
quotes, not really indie anymore. They're all 8-bit, 16-bit, you know, more or less. Something
Yeah.
that probably could have been on Super Nintendo at some point.
I will say my favorite retro console of all time is the NES, but going back and playing that now, there are certain caveats you have to have. You don't really need that with Super Nintendo.
Yeah, most of the games, like once after the first year or so, I would say like most of the games that are worth playing still hold up. Like they run at a decent frame rate and they look nice and the controls make sense. Or like some old NES games, you know, that might not be true. Like the frame rate's awful and there's flicker or
Like,
you
yeah,
know,
like how Mega Man, like just everything, yeah, all the screen flicker and stuff.
right. You
There's
know,
still
that's
good
something you kind of got
games,
used
but-
to.
There's still good games,
Super
but like,
Nin-
yeah, there's caveats to them, you know?
But yeah, and that was less so with the Super Nintendo. The games felt like they were more finished to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, well, with that, you know, we're talking about Mega Man and some other of our favorite games here. They all kind of had like we know the NES was kind of infamous for their weird experimental sequels. I think the Super Nintendo is when we got like the first real true sequels to certain games, like Link to the Past is much more of a true sequel to the first game than Zelda 2 was, The Adventure of Link, because it takes what the first game did and then iterates and improves on it. And I know that that's a particular favorite amongst many of our panel members here specifically.
It is. And it was one of the things that when I was thinking of it feeling like Super, you know, the system was Nintendo games, but Super, that's a great example, right? It's like similar format and gameplay to the original NES Zelda game, but everything looks better. There's just more of it. The world's bigger. The puzzles are more complex. There's more items. It's
And again,
longer.
going back to the whole like graphics discussion, that's another game that today still holds up. I think that game looks beautiful, even in 2020. Like,
I played
I've
it.
been- That's not surprising.
it's usually like an every other day.
Yeah, no, it's I like you said, the graphics, the jump up. I mean, it was so good that when they put it on they made the game for the 3DS Link Between Worlds. It was almost the same aesthetic, just a little different, but still the same setup. Like they didn't change it. So
Yeah, they basically like mapped it to 3D polygons, but that was about the
Yeah.
extent of it.
same idea, same premise, same boss, and the one looked like a hamburger. Same thing.
Hamburger.
boss.
I know exactly which one you're talking
Yeah.
about. The one on Death Mountain, right? The worm that's like
Yeah.
kind of goes around and
The
That
hamburger.
one always knocked me off. Oh, that stupid tail.
Yeah, I got real frustrated in that. I've never actually beaten Link to the Past.
That's one that.
I know, it's one of my big Zelda black eyes.
you can do it.
Probably
Every
Super
time
It doesn't
every
take
time
long.
every time I play it, I get farther and then I'll get like frustrated by something and stop.
Probably Super Nintendo games are probably the games I've beaten the most of. Like I'm very notorious at picking up a game and playing a little bit here, a little bit there. But Super Nintendo, I think most of my collection I've beat. Well, I can't say most of my collection, but majority I've got to the end and beaten the game.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like, I hadn't really thought about that, but I think that's true for me too. And I think it's because a lot of those games really incentivize the idea of finishing them, because there was like an ending. There was a story to some of these games where like you didn't know what they were going to do next. Whereas, just looking backwards at some of the older games on the Nintendo, sometimes you just get to a point where you just give up because you knew the next stage was just going to be that, or like a slightly different color of it. and harder. But Super Nintendo was more, we were like, oh, the next stage could be completely different. We're like, I need to know how the story resolves.
Oh, absolutely.
I also think with like when it, so, Sean and I grew up same age. We had the Nintendo when we were kids. So you're playing a game, you're not really invested in it. When you get the Super Nintendo, we're starting to become, almost teenagers, getting right into that. So you're going to spend more time playing these games that you're going to be more invested in than a Nintendo game that you might not. With that being said, I play a lot of Nintendo games too. But no, my Super Nintendo, I had it. I got lucky because I never had to decide between a Genesis and a Super Nintendo.
I know. That's why you were one of my friends.
Because I have a brother.
One of my
the
friends.
brother got the Genesis and I got the Super Nintendo. So the Super Nintendo was in my bedroom. He had the Genesis in his bedroom. That's why I can talk about Dynamite Headdy whenever I want because I really like playing it. But I always had the Super Nintendo. So I think I made out like a bandit.
Yeah, you did. That's why I'd be like, I'm going to sleep over at Joe's house tonight. And then I'd want to spend the whole time in your brother's room playing Ren and Stimpy on.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Ren
Yeah.
and
So you
Stimpy.
just,
I remember those.
Forgot he had
games.
that, but now I remember it.
Here it comes. All right, I said I threatened to turn it into a Bubsy podcast, but I'm gonna push for Sega Genesis now. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Hey,
Sorry.
Sega does with Nintendo, so we're in. Boom.
So in 1990, Sonic the Hedgehog was released and revolutionized what we thought gaming could do.
I like that you're ready.
Yeah. Hey, I host a podcast for a
Thanks,
reason, I
Scott.
guess.
Is Sega paying you for this?
Yeah, I wish. No, this episode's sponsored by Skillshare, but but no. All right, so let's talk a little bit. We're talking about some games here. Let's get into a little bit of our favorite Super Nintendo games. Now, I can mention what my favorite Super Nintendo game is, and occasionally in the store, people will ask you that to kind of get to make conversation thing with you, and mine's always surprising to people. And I had to think about it at first. I was like, what game do I still keep going back to? What game have I beaten the most times? Just like, what game do I always go to when I hook up my Super Nintendo? And that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. That's my number one pick for Super Nintendo.
Fine
Solid
choice,
pick.
fine choice.
That's a good
Not
one.
just because of the subject matter, which I'm a big fan of, but other than it not having 4-player, I think it improves on. It's a home port from the 16-bit era that improves on the arcade because there's so many more stages. You can play as the animation or the comic colors of the turtles, which once I discovered that, I never went back.
I never understood that at first. I was never a fan of Turtles. I'm like, why are they all the same color? I had no idea for a while.
Yeah. But like me and my friend Kendall, we've beaten it on hardcore or the hard mode. Like, I think we're getting our time down to like 10, 15 minutes somewhere in there.
I was gonna ask if you. Had,
we played it. We've played
man.
it so much.
I think the best I've ever done was 19 minutes.
Yeah. We have to play it on hard because at the end, that's when Splinter tells you you're true ninjas and everyone gets to jump and freeze frame. But if you beat it on normal or easy, he's just like, well, you're not true ninjas. And then the game's just a bummer at the end.
Oh,
Don't
my
you skip
God.
stages on the lower difficulty levels too? Or am I remembering that wrong?
No, I think they're all there, but it's also been a really long time since I played on lower difficulty levels.
I remember when I played that game for the first time. I don't remember if I played in the arcade or not, but I remember when I played on the Super Nintendo. I was so amazing how that the level in the Terradrome when you're throwing them at the screen, the foot soldiers, that was so cool. That was amazing.
Yeah, and that's
That
one of
mode
the-
7 graphics, man.
Yeah.
That's one of the console exclusive stages that you didn't go into Technodrome in the arcade game. After Sewer Surf and Shredder just sent you into a time portal from which you
right.
never escape.
Oh my God, you're right.
But Bebop
Yeah.
and Rocksteady aren't in the arcade game. Slash isn't in the arcade game. Slash was replaced some mud monster. So it had more recognizable characters. And because it had more stages, they still had Toka and Razar. They just moved them from the pirate ship to the arcade game, or to the Technodrome rather. But like the music in it also slaps.
Oh, it's so that you know what? I think that soundtrack defines the word slaps.
Yeah.
So
I
good.
don't know, man, what does slaps mean? I have no idea what you're talking about.
The kids-
Listen to
yeah.
you know that soundtrack, the music for the first level where it's like blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
and you're just like immediately into it.
Yeah.
That slaps. That's
The first level is called Big Apple 3 AM.
Big Apple.
But no, all of it's so. It's one of my favorite gaming soundtracks, and
Yeah,
like,
it's so good.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, like back in the day, remember when we did our old Level Up podcast and we did our favorite video game soundtracks? I mean,
Yeah.
we can revisit that again at some point because that was really good.
I'm definitely down for that. But that
I
old
do
podcast is why the first few episodes of this one were called the New Level Up Entertainment Podcast, because I was uncreative and couldn't come up with a
Third
name.
time's a charm, right?
Yeah.
Fourth time,
But I really like this new one because it was partly inspired by Garfield and Friends. So, and I think
if you want to talk about underrated, all right, two things. One,
Yeah.
if you want to talk underrated, Garfield and Friends is an underrated
Yes.
cartoon.
it's on
That's a
CBS All
great
Access
show, yeah.
now.
It is a great cartoon.
It
Two,
is.
if you want to start a Garfield and Friends podcast, Scott,
uh-huh.
let me know.
All right, I'll let you know.
That show
We
was
can talk about Sheldon and
I was going to bring up Sheldon. He was my favorite.
He was a great character. And what was that called? Barnyard or what? No, Barnyard.
That was the end Friends part.
yeah.
Wasn't there a title to what they were called?
I don't remember. It's been a minute since I've
To
seen
this day,
it. Yeah.
whenever someone says the word Wyoming or I read the word Wyoming, I think it means no state here, and that there is no state of Wyoming. Does anyone remember that gag, or is it just me?
I got it.
I have a vague
It's been a while.
recollection of
I
it.
remember it.
I haven't
There's a bit
watched
with
it.
Garfield
Yeah.
explaining Wyoming is not really a state because it really means no state here, and it's just it's amazing. Anyway,
Oh my god! I have to.
Garfield and Friends.
Oh.
You could cut this out.
No, it's staying in.
Stuff staying in.
So back to Turtles.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, that's my feelings on Turtles in Time. Not that I expect one of you guys to be like, oh, that sucks, but I know it's a little bit.
Surprised.
It's a
What
little
an
bit
awesome
of an
game.
odd pick
Turtles
at your
in Time.
favorite game, just because there are so many hits.
No, I mean, I don't think it's an odd pick. It's one of the best games on the system. Like, you can make an argument, honestly, like, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked a little bit beforehand, but I think we can make an argument from all the games we're picking from today of our favorites. You can make a point that it's one of the best games on the system. You know,
I think so.
top five. You know,
In fact,
I don't think so.
I
I think like top 20 easily.
Google agrees because when earlier I Googled best SNES games, and in fact, I have it up right now, and I can tell you that Turtles in Time was pretty high up there. It beat out, it's like top 20, maybe. Just like right on the verge. I'm not going to count them all. It's right
Yeah.
behind Final Fantasy VI and right in front of Contra 3. So
It's
it's
in good
definitely
company,
one
then.
of the best ones.
You know, I was before we did this, I was Googling underrated or hidden gems.
Uh-huh.
And because I was just trying to here's what I'm thinking. And I was like, what did other people think? And then people picked stuff like Final Fantasy and like ActRaiser and stuff. And I'm like, and Zombies Ate My Neighbors was like number one on all of them. Like, people don't talk about these games. But I think that's because my opinions on this stuff has been skewed from working in the store and talking about this stuff for so long.
I was thinking about that too, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you define a hidden gem? Because I scoffed at myself when I was thinking like, oh, I could talk about Tetris Attack. I'm like, it's not obscure. It's not,
Yeah.
but it kind of is, to the average person,
But
the regular person,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
it's on the Super Nintendo Classic, right? But like, it's not. Anyway, I know exactly what you mean. It's hard to judge that for having our perspective, but like knowing like the games that cost like $4,000.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a hidden game. That's a rare, obscure game. So our barometer is way off for that.
Yeah. Katie, what would you call your favorite game for this SNES here?
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
It's Bubsy.
for
I say I prefer Bubsy 2 because of the Nerf tie-in. Really gave it that like authenticity. I'm sorry. Go on.
Okay.
Change the top of the game.
My favorite game of all time is Mega Man X. Always has been. I still think to this day, if I had to pick a favorite video game out of every single console that was out there in existence, Mega Man X would still be my number one pick, because as a kid, I played video games nonstop, and when I say nonstop, I mean nonstop. And a lot of games I thought were a little too easy. So when I picked up Mega Man X, it was kind of like the perfect, at the time, it was like the perfect challenge for me. So I just became obsessed with it, to the point where I asked my mom if she would make me an X costume for Halloween one time. She didn't do it.
Oh.
Didn't do it, but
Oh man.
It was
Because that would be some amazing
it would have been, but she
content right there.
so it would have been cool looking.
Well,
but
you do have the other
I will say, Mega Man X is a great game. I think the thing that I think its secret sauce is the controls are so fluid and like you have so much control over what your character can do that it's just fun to run around and platform in, I think.
And the game's designed around that, right?
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Kate. Yeah, I didn't mean to, but like it knows how you move. It doesn't mess with you on that, right? Like it's built for that dash and run and slide mechanic.
Absolutely. It actually, the funny thing about Mega Man games is that in a roundabout way, they kind of teach you how to play the game. Like they're actually designed that way. So if you kind of pay attention to some earlier NES Mega Man games, the levels were designed in a way to kind of show you like, hey, this is coming up. You should watch out for this. Like, you know, whether it's a platform falling or like the bricks like showing up and disappearing.
I hate those stupid things.
I hate them. They're what keep me from beating Mega Man games.
Awful. I still can't do it to this day. So, but like X kind of did the same thing as like when I was a kid, because it was, you know, we had those manuals that came with the games, but that was kind of it. There were no like tutorials. It didn't really teach you how to play, but like through the design of the levels itself, it kind of taught you how to use your controls, how to use your weapons,
Jump and Shoot Man.
upgrades, everything like that.
Jump and Shoot Man.
What
Have you
was
ever
it?
seen that video, Katie?
Yes,
Yeah,
I have. It's fantastic.
I was
It is-
I'm
That's
pretty
actually
sure
what I
talked
was
about it.
referencing.
It is a brilliant game. I mean, it literally has that first level. That is that it is teaching you how to play that game. But
Yeah.
like it's on a ruined highway, and this music's awesome. There's like spiked robots falling at you, so you're learning how to play it while it's awesome and not boring. You know,
And
it's
the music. Oh
Another game where the soundtrack slaps.
whew.
no, straight up, like definition.
No, it's just chock full of bangers.
Katie, real quick, wasn't that game? Didn't Mega Man X also have you can find the Hadouken too?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I couldn't remember which one it was, but I know one of the X series had it. By
Armored Armadillo.
And
That
yeah,
was so
actually,
cool.
Armored Armadillo's level. What you have to do is you have to 100%. Let me see if I can remember this. You have to
I
get
don't
all
remember
of
it
the
at all. Never getting it.
what's
Yeah,
that?
it's armor upgrades. The
Yeah.
Dr.
All the
Light-
armor
It's
upgrades.
all the armor upgrades, and then you have to do Armored Armadillo's level like 3 times, I think, and then Dr. Light's capsule like appears way at the top, and
At the very, very end of the level. I think you have to die like
you have
It's
to
the
die,
final.
6 or 7 times.
or something like that.
I
And,
don't remember the number, but you have to make that final jump.
Yeah.
And it's the most.
It's
You
very
have to be pixel
painful,
perfect.
yeah.
and it's so
It's
like,
aggravating.
oh my god, it's aggravating.
And it's also fairly useless because it's so much lag to shoot one thing where you can just have a shoot button.
Because you have to do the input.
You have to do
right?
the yeah.
You have to do the actual input.
I mean, it's a fun Easter egg.
If you do the speed running of it, that's the way they beat every boss afterwards.
That's the only way.
Is it really?
One shot.
One
Interesting.
shot,
It one shots at like almost every boss.
Did not know that. Wow.
I didn't know
That's
that.
So I guess
either.
Scott and I just suck at it.
Yeah, we're just bad.
No, I-
I can't do
I
it.
can't do it either.
So-
I've only done it one time, and I've never been able to do it again.
To be fair, I can barely pull off Hadoukens in Street Fighter.
That's fair.
I've only done it once too, Katie, and the only time was on the PSP version, the Maverick Hunter edition.
Really? Yes.
Only time I've ever earned the Hadouken upgrade is on the PSP.
Oh my
Never got it on the original game.
I did do it on Super Nintendo, but I just did it, and I was like, all right, that was the last thing I did in the game, and I was like, all right, I did it, so I can say I did it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay. I love his little like voice. It's so adorable.
yeah. No, yeah. X is
It's a good
X is a
tech.
great game.
Oh, so good. I can go on for hours about it, but
But I digress. I mean, it's no Mega Man Soccer, but you know.
I love that game.
What is?
So
that game
good.
is
Yeah,
amazing.
nothing can be Mega Man Soccer.
All dust, man.
Perfect spin-off game.
See, there's one that's underappreciated or like it's not like rare, but it's or not expensive, but it's underappreciated.
It's under.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
read that
it's
game
not
earlier.
common, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't particularly care for Mega Man Soccer. I think it's more fun that it just exists.
You're dead inside, Scott.
Yeah,
Have you no soul?
yeah, not really.
Want to run around with Dust Man? What?
Yeah.
So what do we have so far? We've got Turtles in Time,
We got Mega Man
Mega
X.
Man X.
Greg, what about you?
My favorite. I'm gonna put it up so everybody can see it. It's this
For
one
the
right
audio version, all right.
here. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about it too. Final
Just
Fantasy
show it,
2
don't talk.
or 4 in Japan, whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
but the American 2. I think that's. I mean, besides the original Final Fantasy for Nintendo, that's what really got me in. That's what got me into RPGs. Final Fantasy 2 like cemented my love for RPGs. Just it's the game that I love. It's such a basic story of like good versus evil, and just like graphically was really cool, and you meet all these really cool characters, and it looked beautiful. The music again was great. The overall was really cool. It was a game I spent 80 plus, 90 plus hours playing. I think I just love it. I don't play it every year because it takes a lot of time, but I do play it pretty often. It's probably my favorite game for Super Nintendo.
Now it's interesting that you picked Final Fantasy 2 because I think most people pick 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was debating on doing that one myself.
I think
because 3 is my favorite Final Fantasy game.
I think 3 has I like 2 a lot. I think I like storyline. I think 3 has a better story in general than 2. And I don't think there's hidden characters in 2, but there are hidden characters in 3 definitely.
Yeah, there's hidden characters in 3.
And I don't want to, again, I know this game's, Final Fantasy 3 is years and years and years old, but I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But man, that midpoint of the game is amazing. Like, it's the first time my jaw dropped. Like, oh my god, like what a crazy thing to happen.
Yeah, but Final Fantasy 2/4 is also an amazing RPG.
Oh yeah,
I would say it's probably got better characters than 6. 3.
I think there's a smaller cast. They spend more time.
So it can focus on them a little bit more, and they can tell a more detailed story with them.
I thought 2 had a more personal story than 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it is, and I was gonna say that 2 is never my favorite, and I remember kind of like skipping over it at the time, and it was actually like I went backwards, like 6, 5, 4, so 3, and then 5 that never came out here, and 2 was the order I played them in. And I remember thinking that like it looked really rough, like graphically, that because it was an early release, if I remember correctly.
It came out 91.
Yeah. So it's the first year. So, it didn't look that impressive, but once I actually played it, I remember the first mission you do as Kain. It's like you think you're this knight and you're going on this, you're sent out by the kingdom, and I'm going to butcher because it's been ages since I played it, to take this package to a town. And when you get there, you find out it's a bomb and it destroys the town. And one of the
townspeople, yeah.
You murder a town and you're responsible for it, and then that's the character has to grapple with that, and one of the survivors of the town becomes a party member later, and there's like a pathos to it for these like little tiny 16 by like 4 sprites that are just like it made video games feel like they could be so much more than just reflexive fun arcade experiences. Like you can tell real stories with this stuff.
And 2 had an amazing story. Like I played 4 on the GBA when it came out, and I just remember blowing through it super fast, just because I was so sucked into the story, and I was like, wow, like that's what really caught me about 2 was the story more than anything.
Yeah, like Sean said, it grabs you right away with that mission. You're like, cool, and then you're like, and the worst part is like you go with your best friend in the game, and then you find out he's a bad guy because he helps you bring to the town to kill all these people. But yeah, like I said, like 2 is a personal story, where 3 is more of like the group story.
Yeah, 3 is a little bit more global.
But 2, like I never really thought about that. Like 2, graphically, it is not as nice looking, but I think it's to set the standard for RPG gameplay, like the very basics of it at least.
Well, yeah, I think at the time it probably was impressive, right? Like I played, like, cause I passed that game over at the time and came back to it after playing the better, arguably much more advanced looking 3. So like it was in comparison, but I bet like, if you played it early on, it probably was like, whoa, look at there's a lot of colors on the screen.
Just compare it to Final Fantasy on NES. Wow, There's more than black.
Yeah. There was like a blue strip, with some green.
You can have more than 4 characters. What is this? Not to disparage Final Fantasy on NES, because that's still a very impressive game for that console. Mm-hmm. But like and granted, there were more sequels in between. But for us, it jumped from Final Fantasy 1 to Final Fantasy 2, which is really Final Fantasy 4. So that's kind of a huge leap in every aspect of the game. Storytelling, characters, music, setting, just it's on much more powerful hardware. But yeah, no, 2 is a good pick. I'm glad you brought that one up, Greg. I think of the Final Fantasy main games on that's the more underrated one. I would say Mystic Quest is much more underrated.
Mystic Quest is the best battle music.
But I was about to say Mystic
It
Quest.
is very good.
I think Mystic Quest is a little bit more by design, meant to kind of not be as memorable in a way.
Well, it's an intro to RPGs. I mean, not to get into it. I can talk about that for hours, but
Right, and we have, and it's always great.
Yeah, I've always called it baby's first RPG.
it is.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it's meant to be. I'm not trying to disparage it.
Yeah, what's up, Sean?
I was going to say, like, I think it's really interesting that you picked Final Fantasy II because it has this really unique release that not a lot of games got, where they actually changed the game pretty heavily for American audiences, and which was not super uncommon at the time, and it's become like increasingly less common to alter content if you're bringing it out to other countries. But like at the time, Japan and Square didn't have faith that Americans. I think Nintendo's pushed this too, but I could, correct me if I'm wrong. The idea that Americans could handle a difficult RPG. They thought that if they released a game like Final Fantasy IV, that Americans wouldn't play it and they'd be turned off. So they called it Final Fantasy II because, like Scott said, we didn't get the other ones, in between ones, and then they made it easier. Like they made fundamental changes to the gameplay so that it was less difficult because it just didn't think we could handle it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like throwing back to, again, not Super Nintendo, but that's why we never had the loss levels in America.
Yeah.
They thought it was
Right.
Americans couldn't handle the difficulty of it.
And that worked out for the best.
Yeah.
I agree.
I know it was a combination of that and that it looked exactly like the first game, so people would. I know that was a concern where they're like, well, it's not pushing the envelope any farther. But I kind of hate Super Mario Brothers 2 / The Lost Levels, as it's known on Super Nintendo. It's just cruel for no reason.
It is.
Yeah, and I think it's fun.
Yeah, the Super Nintendo is the first time Americans got an opportunity to play the Lost Levels, actually.
Yeah.
It's with All Stars.
That's one of my potential alternates, depending on what you guys want to bring up. I was going to cheat and pick Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World because I was like, oh, Mario World's going to be cliche, but that's one of my top ones.
So good.
And I was like, oh, I could just pick that and get all of them on one cart. But Joey, how about you? What would you say is your favorite Super Nintendo game?
My favorite. I mean, Super Tennis is great.
That's why there's so many copies out there.
Yeah.
Because I have 4.
Jeez. I don't know. There's 2 obvious ones. I don't know which to choose as my favorite.
Well, I'll pick one and then we'll circle back around.
Okay, then that's easy. Then I'll talk about we were talking about it earlier. It's the upgrade of all upgrades from NES to Super Nintendo. Well, no, the other one is like that too. I'm gonna say Link to the Past.
Yeah.
Link to the Past. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite. I play it more often than I play other Super Nintendo games. I just love it. I love the graphic style, the weapons, just everything about the game. It's such like you said, an upgrade from the first Zelda that I play it all the time. And now in today's world, they have it where you can play the game and have all of the items randomized throughout the level. So it almost gives like new life to the game that you're playing it and try to remember where you go and you face bosses differently than you did before. But I love the game. I love the style. I love everything about it. And it's an easy pick. I feel like it's most people's top, for sure, top 10 of Super Nintendo games. It's not
it's many people's #1 Zelda game.
Oh yeah, we just talked about this. On the Zelda podcast.
Yeah, we talked about when we talked about Breath of the Wild. We talked about our history with the Zelda franchise, and Sean went into great detail about Link to the Past.
Excruciating.
So go back and listen to that episode once you're done with this.
So a fun Greg fact for Zelda is I have never played that's not 100% true. I played a little bit. I've never really played a 3D Zelda game. I've played a little bit of
So have you only played like Link to the Past?
Yeah, Ocarina of Time. Never. I played that for a little bit. Never played Majora's Mask. Never played Wind Waker. Never played.
Oh my gosh.
any on the DS.
All the other ones because you
Oh my
didn't
God.
remember the name of.
But yeah,
Wait, no, hang on. You did play Twilight Princess at E3 2005.
I did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
that
did
counts.
Breath of
10
the Wild
minutes.
was gorgeous. So Breath of the Wild is only but again, I've only wandered the world, never really played the game. Like
I
wandered.
mean,
and wandered,
that is
but-
playing the game.
Busted, Greg. You're wrong.
Here's a
Gotcha.
I've got a joke fact off of that.
I'll rephrase. I haven't enjoyed a 3D one.
I've got a joke fact off of Greg's fact in the same vein. I haven't finished a 3D Zelda. I think I've played a lot of Ocarina, but then I got like originally on the 64, and then I stopped playing for a day or two in the water level, and I went back and I had no idea what I was doing, so I stopped playing.
Stupid water.
Yeah,
level.
yeah. With Zelda, there's two styles: the overhead classic style, and then the 3D, the lock-on ones. And it seems people generally gravitate towards one or the other. I'm more partial to the 3D ones, just because I like more of the spatial reasoning puzzles and stuff in the dungeons. That is more my jam. Versus like the not to say that there's not great puzzles in 2D ones, because one of my favorite Zeldas of all time is Link's Awakening. But yeah, it's just one of those things, like you like one or the other, and you don't have to justify it. It's just a style, it's just what works for you or not.
Actually, Scott, you do need to justify it. Go ahead, justify
Yeah.
it.
No, that's it. All right. I know I threatened to turn it into a Bubsy podcast, and then
Yeah.
Sega Genesis podcast, but now it's Scott defending his dislike of 2D Zelda. Let's go.
I don't know. I just find I do find the combat a little.
No, let's not actually do this.
But
I am joking, dude. It's fine.
Well, Sean,
Leave the Bubsy.
I don't care.
Sean, I think we all know what your pick's going to be for your favorite. What is your favorite Super Nintendo game?
This is such a hard. It's actually a lot harder to answer the question than you might think.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with the obvious one just to do it, but I wanted to list like some of the other games that I had been thinking of. A Link to the Past, like Joey said, Chrono Trigger. None of these are obscure or rare.
I know what it is. Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball.
Oh my God! How did you know?
Why didn't they call that?
I'm your friend. Why would I know that?
Dude, I love the box art with the buzzsaw coming out of the floor.
Yeah.
I wanted to play
So
that
weird.
so bad, and it was awful. But oh my God, that buzzsaw! And he had the armor, right? Like anyway.
Sorry. Bubsy.
Bad game.
Yoshi's Island was another one I considered talking about because I think that game is absolutely brilliant. But I have to go with Earthbound. As we mentioned earlier in the podcast, we talked about the giant box, the tagline, this game stinks. I remember, I wasn't into RPGs when the Super Nintendo was like producing some of the greatest RPGs ever. And I didn't really get into them until Earthbound, because Earthbound was like, instead of Dungeons and Dragons and other things that were copyright infringement, but like instead of like that fantasy realm, it was suburbia, right? Like the screenshots had a pizza delivery guy in it, and you rode your bike, and there was a mall, and I still remember the first article in Nintendo Power about it. It wasn't even a full article. It was like on the from Japan segment, like
It's like one of those previews they did, right? Like little
real short
page,
yeah, like not even a full column worth, and it had those tiny screenshots, and I was just immediately entranced by the concept of a modern world role-playing game. And then the graphics are very kind of crude, but also incredibly charming, like intentionally crude, like almost like crayon drawings, but 16-bit. And it spoke to me immediately. I wanted to know everything about it. Every time a new Nintendo Power issue came out, I poured through it to read about it. As soon as it hit, I rented it because, again, these things cost a lot of money. So like we were talking $90 for Earthbound in that giant box. It came with a strategy guide, and I couldn't afford it at the time, but I rented it constantly. Like, if you remember renting games, especially with battery backups, you'd have them for what, like 3 days, 5 days,
like
whatever the
weekend,
long period was.
A week.
Yeah.
Not lucky.
Yeah. And then you'd get so far in the game and save it, and then you have to bring it back, and then like you wouldn't be able to rent the game again until maybe Friday because that was me anyway. I could rent a game on Friday.
Yeah.
100%.
And you would hope that the
feel.
game, you'd go in there and you'd be like, oh my god, please, I hope the game's still
Please
there.
be
I hope
on
it's still,
there.
please be the same save, and they didn't delete it, And I got through the game more than once doing that, and then I eventually did buy it myself, and I had it, and then I lost it. I won't go into that, and I have it again thanks to this wonderful gentleman right here. Well after the point where it stopped being reasonable to pay
was
money.
not reasonable.
No,
I sold it to him.
and I have it right here because I still love it and I keep it in great shape. I have a shelf in my office dedicated to Mother where I have Scott got me this really awesome perler bead, like 2D or NES. I
believe I got that from Geek Mythology at Too Many Games when I first met them. And they've been at the store for
did.
years now. Yeah.
It was at Too Many Games. And then they came in. They've been at most of our free comic book days since.
Yeah,
right?
they've been big supporters of the store, and I love their stuff. I've got a Scrooge McDuck from them in the back office at the store from the DuckTales game. My joke is it's aspirational because he's there with a treasure chest and he's rich. But I finally I don't mean this as a backhanded compliment, but I'd say Mother is better as an experience than as a moment-to-moment gameplay.
Well, just real quick for people who might not know, Mother is the Japanese
title.
Sorry. In fact, I have. You can see the box for Mother 2. When I went to Japan, it was a priority that I pick up Mother 1 and 2 boxed, and which is great because at the time they were like $30 each, so they were no big deal.
Yeah,
I think they're more now. That's an interesting take. I'll fight you later.
Because my experience with the game is I finally played it like 3-4 years ago. And that was after like hearing about the hype for it for years and it became like this infamously like hard to find game. And I finally got around to playing it. I'm like, this isn't bad, but I'm like, is it living up? To me, it wasn't living up to the hype. And then after I beat it, like the farther I got from the game and the more I kind of reflected on it, the more it like really endeared itself to me.
That's the game.
Yeah, because like moment to moment, I'm like, inventory management is super annoying.
That's awful.
Yeah, I thought the game was.
No, the inventory in that game is so clunky and frustrating. The combat is clunky for the same reasons. All menu based.
Weird
people who
and
aren't familiar.
confusing.
Yeah,
it is.
But like in retrospect on it, I'm like, I really like that game. People should play it.
Yes.
They should, and I don't want to derail the whole thing, but just like one more thing to say about Earthbound is that it's a very reflective game. It forces you to stop at various points throughout the game and think about what you've done up until that point, and not to spoil it, but it's also very old. But at the area in the game, it's very reflective. The final thing you do and the way that the end boss fight resolves is all about thinking about how far you've come. And the whole game in of itself is about growing up and what it means to be a kid in a world that doesn't really make sense to kids. And it's just, there's so much going on in this game that makes it almost impossible not to feel endeared if you're paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not to say anything about how funny it can be at times, because the translation's really good. And just, the game was made by Shigesaki Itoi. Itoi is his last name. I don't know, I'm butchering his first name, but he's a writer first. He's a Japanese author and columnist. So he wanted to make a game that was about something, not just a video game, and it's about growing up. And I think it stands the test of time because it's something so different and heartfelt.
It was way ahead of its time. Like I feel like that's why so many people slept on it, because it was like it was almost like the gaming world wasn't ready for it. At least Americans weren't.
I think so.
Yeah, at least here, I don't think the marketing did it any favors. We talked because it's.
Oh no.
It's
all marketing killed it.
I found it off-putting at the time, and it doesn't reflect what the game's about at all.
Not even
combined with the high price point and the fact that RPGs were not major sellers here yet. I think it had a lot of things going against it. And then I think the best thing that happened for it was Ness showing up in Smash Brothers.
Yep.
Because when I unlocked Ness and Captain Falcon, I was like, who the hell are these characters?
Who the hell is Ness?
A lot of
Said everybody in 1999 when they unlocked him in Smash Brothers.
everybody at the same time was
But he was
"Who
a
are
great,
these people?"
but he was a great weird offbeat choice, and I'm glad that he's in it because it helps bring the Mother series, Earthbound to the greater gaming consciousness. And
I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's how I heard about it, and then I looked up like, what is this Earthbound nonsense? And I went on the internet and I played what I thought was his game, which was the Famicom one translated, but
which is even less of a fun experience.
I think that game is kind of unplayable. Like once you get to Magic Cant, it's really hard to tell where you're going.
Yeah, and it's I don't want to derail it. There's a lot you could say about the Mother series. Mother 1 is very different from Mother 2 in a lot of ways, but it's also very much a first pass, and it feels like Earthbound is like the final draft. Like, they got it. It's much more of a completed vision.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you don't need to have played the first one, which is good because we did not get that here.
Right.
But we also have some other games we talked about that we want to bring up. And I guess going off of my comments on Earthbound, so there's so many good RPGs on the Super Nintendo. I know we name dropped a bunch of them, but the one I feel like has great characters and tells a good story, but I think the moment to moment gameplay is the most satisfying. And I picked it over Final Fantasy VI, but I think Chrono Trigger is my pick for best RPG on the console.
Yeah. I just realized that I say after someone says the name of a game, I just go, because they're all great. They're all amazing.
Every game we've mentioned so
That's
far.
from the heart, Sean. That's from the heart. Even Bill Lambier.
And Greg, I know you've had a lot of experience with Chrono Trigger in the past.
I did. Yeah, I have. It's a great game.
Do you want to talk about it? Or?
Yeah.
No, I don't actually. It hurts too much. Because let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a quick story about Chrono Trigger for me. So, long time ago, as I mentioned earlier, I think, or when we were off, I forget. Little Greg saved up his money and bought Chrono Trigger. Years and years and years and years later, I was working at EB Games in Deptford Mall, and there was this girl that I sort of liked, and she liked RPGs and games like that. She wanted to borrow Chrono Trigger. I was like, no, you can't borrow Chrono Trigger. It's my favorite game. I spent a lot of money on it. I can't let you have this, but let you borrow this. So she comes back late. She kept on bugging me about it. I'm like, no. So finally she came back to me and she was like, okay, this is the deal. I'll let you borrow my Vagrant Story, Legend Dragoon, and Resident Evil 2 for PlayStation.
Oh my god.
And I'll let you borrow.
It's so close to being the same value now. Like,
and like I said, since I liked her, I was like, sure, that seems fair. If she's not going to go away with my awesome Super Nintendo game, I have 3 of her really great games.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I never saw that game again. And then it's the only game I've ever rebought complete. Like, I don't care about getting like other games, like just the cartridge or whatever, but I had to have that game back complete. So I finally bought it off of Wes, who may have been on this podcast before I forget. I'm not sure.
He was on the Deep Space Nine episode.
Okay. Watch that one. I bought it from him at a really good price. He was very generous. I think it cost me $130 at the time.
For complete, that's amazing.
Wow.
that is really good.
Because he was getting rid of it anyway. But so I have it again. But it's not exactly the same. But I really like the game. I thought it's not my favorite RPG on the system. But I do like I think it's the best action RPG on the Super Nintendo. There was like, that was I'm drawing a blank on the other game.
Like Secret of Mana and stuff.
Yeah, Secret of Mana. Thank you. And like
Secret of Evermore.
Secret of Evermore. But the game is really great, and I really like. My favorite thing is you could play 3 players if you had the multi-tap for the Super Nintendo, which was really awesome. And me and my friend also played 2 players quite often on that game.
On Chrono Trigger?
Chrono Trigger, yeah.
I completely forgot that you could do the multi-tap on Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, you can play the third character. And like,
Square did that a lot. You do that in Final Fantasy 3 as well, which is so disorienting when you're like, it's you.
And you can do it on
go. It's your turn.
You can do it on
the
Secret
game is beautiful. The story's there. Like, again, it's a really great story.
This another like kind of personal, even though it's about like saving the world and time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first game. I probably not the first game with multiple endings, but it's the first one I'm aware of.
It had 20 endings, I think.
Yeah, it had a ridiculous amount. Let
me check the back of the Japanese box to see if it says how many.
Yeah.
30. There, I don't know, but there's a number 32 on here. So maybe.
Yeah. But
That's the answer.
It's 32.
yeah, no, it was also amazing because it's again we got the Dragon Quest games here, but they had different box art. So this is the first time I remember seeing Kira Toriyama art for a video game rather than like Dragon Ball.
And it's so interesting because the Super Nintendo box art is completely out of continuity with the actual game. You have one character using a fire spell. That character does not use fire in spells in the game. Like all characters have distinctly one element
Elemental, yeah.
attack, right? And they have Marl shooting fire, and on the cover, and like it's so funny that it is like it's great artwork. It's a great cover, but it's just like none of that made it into the game.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
This is not the game.
the Japanese box is just a lineup of the Akira Toriyama characters, and like, yeah, okay, that's representative.
Yeah.
And going back to like the gameplay too, like the item system was I thought real well done in Chrono Trigger. Like it was really easy to get your items, change them with that circle wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of Secret of Mana with.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I think of Mana.
Well, I'll just say because what Chrono Trigger has is everyone's got special moves, but depending on your configuration, you can unlock various combinations and team attacks that would have different. So you can have different strategies with different builds of characters and certain time periods because you can travel through time in the game. Like there's some you only have access to certain characters at different points in the game.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what I'm talking. I'm sorry, Sky. Like I'm getting kids confused. Wow.
Yeah.
It's tired.
You said action RPG, and I was like, it's turn-based.
I'm totally wrong. Chrono Trigger is an amazing turn-based game with the triple attacks and stuff.
Wait, did that girl take Chrono Trigger or Secret of Mana?
She took Chrono Trigger. Yeah.
Chrono Trigger.
I've heard the story. I heard the story many times, and I was there when he got his new copy of Chrono Trigger.
But I'm getting confused.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about Secret of Mana, Greg, if you'd like.
Nah,
I want to talk about Chrono Trigger some more.
Yeah. But no, I love it. I love that the time travel setting time travel gimmick is super interesting. It's like your party members got a couple of like modern day protagonists, but you get a robot from the future.
I love Frog.
You go to the Middle Ages and get a knight who's cursed to be a frog. You can go back to like caveman times and you get this cave woman joins your party. So you have this really weird, eclectic group of characters. And they all kind of have to work together to fight like this one entity that kind of affects all of the different time points.
It's so good.
I can't explain it without sounding like a crazy person, but it makes sense when you play the game.
Aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, just be that meme. I don't have enough hair.
I'll rephrase it. Chrono Trigger is one of the best games on Super Nintendo RPG-wise. So my bad.
Yeah, I honestly, Chrono Trigger's got that perfect sweet spot of like the story feeling like there's stakes to it without it being bogged down in melodrama. Like the game moves so fast. Like if you go back and play it, you can blow through this whole game in I want to say under 30 hours the first playthrough, and then like because there's New Game Plus, you can do it even faster. But like it's really efficiently told. It feels like you're constant. The pacing is excellent. The music's phenomenal. The gameplay is really fun. The combat system is rewarding. Like there's just everything just clicks into place with this game in a way that rarely happens.
And you get all of that without sacrificing any of the character. Like the characters are all fully well realized and have their own personal stories. And like
they don't try to go too far with it either, right? Like they don't try to like go like you don't get like when I was a kid, I went through all the they don't like have long exposition of character backstories. It's very like who they are by the way they're animated, by the way their speech is, like the way they talk, and like how they act throughout the story, and they all do feel very realized. Like,
it's really SquareSoft at its peak in probably its best age. And I will say, as much as I love Final Fantasy VI, I do think the characters are much, much stronger in Chrono Trigger.
In 6?
No,
really?
in Chrono Trigger, versus 6. 6 has a couple of characters have some really great stories and some really great moments, but like half of them don't reach that same level. Whereas everyone in Chrono Trigger, including optional people you don't necessarily have to get, I think they all at least have one really great standout moment.
I think you're right in that they're all really well defined. I would disagree if only because I don't think there's anybody in Chrono Trigger that's written as well or is as deep as oh my god, Terra from 6. who's got a really interesting arc. But anyway, we don't have to go into all that.
Right.
But I think it speaks to how much you can say about some of these games, that you could really just talk about one of these games for a really, really long time and have a ton of interesting stuff to get into.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to hog up everything, but as I know, we all had some other alternates for our favorite games. But if we want to get into some more of those, Joey, I know you had another game that was very much in league with Link to the Past that you want to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would think, as we said, I feel like Link to the Past is a lot of number ones for people, where some people may say this is their number one as well. I know that Scott doesn't really like it. I know our friend Brian doesn't really like it.
Brian likes it a lot less than I do.
Yes.
Nobody cares what Brian doesn't like, because Brian doesn't like everything.
Yeah,
And
I know.
this is-
I have that reputation. He is that guy.
Yeah, no,
He's way worse than you are with not liking things.
But the tie with the super aspect and the growth from the NES, the answer is Super Metroid. I tried playing Metroid on the NES. I didn't know where I was going. Everything looked the same. You start up Super Metroid, and you're right into it. You're starting like you were playing, one, and the graphics are great. The soundtrack is great.
Oh,
The
God.
mapping, the weapons, the searching, just
The
everything
atmosphere
about
is
it.
so good in it.
It's just, I play it multiple times a year, but I always, since moving into the house, every New Year's Eve I beat it. So I beat it to end each year. It takes me longer than it should, I guess.
What's your time?
It's not great.
Any percent.
it's-
What's
Hour
your
and a
time?
half?
It's like,
Oh, come on.
no, it's
Oh,
not an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's closer to 2. It's closer
Okay.
to 2.
Yeah, you're under 3 hours. That's really damn good.
Because I don't play it that often. So if I played it more, maybe it'll be a little faster.
Oh, only once a year.
But I love it. I love the graphic styling. It brought my love of playing games that are kind of like the Metroidvania kind of
Yeah,
searching games.
I was about to say, like, I know we just made a joke about how I don't like Super Metroid. I love everything in Super Metroid. I love everything about it but playing it. Because I'm not just I'm just basically not a fan of Metroidvania style games.
Ooh.
'Cause I
Not saying boo. He's saying
with
boomer.
Castlevania specifically, I prefer the more linear ones.
Circle of the Moon is the best Castlevania game. Sorry.
That's fine. It's just that it's not a genre I'm into.
Symphony of the Night. Sorry. It's
I
very good.
love the atmosphere in Super Metroid. I love the sense of isolation and the dread and foreboding you have in it. I think it controls fantastically. I love all of the ideas of it. I love the story of it. The music is so good. It's just one of those things. It's just in playing it, I just can't get into it.
It's for me, it is one of those games that is a perfect embodiment of what I was talking about earlier about like Nintendo but Super, because they even do this really amazing moment early in the game where you repeat the same sequence as the very first sequence of the original Metroid, where you come down the elevator, that little like flat bar elevator thing, and you go over to get the Mari ball, whatever it's called, the thing that lets you roll up into a ball. And then but instead of just getting it and then starting the game, it's like everything's dead and quiet. Like you're coming back to this ruined, abandoned, planet that has been completely desolate ever since you left it. And then like this eye turns on and scans it and follows you. And all of a sudden, like, it's like the planet wakes up and there's monsters everywhere and the soundtrack starts. And it's just something that looks almost identical to the original NES Metroid, or at least very familiar. And then it's totally different. It's such a cool moment.
I mean, and we talked about these sequels on Super Nintendo really improving on their NES counterparts. I can't go back to the original Metroid just because everything's black and looks the same. It's so disorienting.
I have a soft spot for it, but that is one of those.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that and like Kid Icarus, I think, have like been left behind, and their sequels have been just such better experiences. Like,
Yeah.
well, Kid Icarus. Anyway,
Well, yeah, Kid Icarus is a horse of a different color, but Super
Yeah,
Metroid is much more comparable to Metroid.
I'm
Yeah.
going to
Better
segue now into
All
my
right.
other game, because we're all talking about this, and
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect time for me because we talked about Metroidvania games. We talked about games being super. Well, my other favorite game, which I do play yearly, is Super Castlevania 4. So I think that's a great segue.
Great pick.
That game.
Probably my favorite Castlevania game.
And nothing to say about it. It's a perfect game. Full stop. Period.
Perfect.
Nothing wrong.
I think I could say a few things about it.
Yeah,
but
I could too.
love it.
I do love it.
It takes
And
like
the
a
sound
minute
actually
to
makes the
start
game
that game.
there. Like the controls are pretty spot on. That's just a great game.
Plus, you can
Soundtrack
jangle
classic.
your whip around, you know?
Yeah.
That soundtrack is amazingly weird. It is one of the. It's a super jazzy, like all this weird gothic stuff, and it starts with that like pipe organs, you know, in the beginning track, and then it starts into like right.
Yeah,
But then it starts getting like weird, like a Yes album a little bit, and
The
then
underground level is like all weird with the drips and the jazz.
Right.
but no, it's another game that has a lot of atmosphere. It's a game that really uses its Mode 7.
Yes.
Oh, it's such a fun game.
This the whole. Oh my god.
It's
the
a-
level it spins.
Swing back and forth or whatever.
It's another
So
game that...
I have another Greg story for Castlevania. Not as bad as this one.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pull a Sophia. Picture it. It was, I forget what year it was. It was some year.
Is that a Golden Girl? Hang on, was that a Golden Girls reference?
It was.
Yes.
Awesome.
Picture it.
Second time Golden
Greg's
Girls
house.
have come up on the podcast.
Greg's house in the den. The TV's on. A friend of mine is over. We decided to play Super Metro or play Super Castlevania. We turn the lights off because we want all the atmosphere. So in the beginning of the game, you know how the game crawls and it's kind of quiet, and then lightning starts and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, it's quiet in my house. When we put the game on, outside the wind starts churning and the lightning starts coming at the same time the game is starting up. We get so scared that we turn the game off. And so we're like, oh my god, Dracula's coming to our house.
That was it, man. You just stepped into a Worlds of Power book.
I did.
You turned on that console and you were God, Lord Dracula is coming to your world to drink your blood like cherry soda.
Change the game. Put in Pilot Wings. Save the day.
Just playing that before we started this podcast.
There you go.
That's-
Yeah, so that's my story for that. It's a great game. I love it. It's probably, again, it's a
Yeah.
top 20 game easy.
It's another sequel that almost super annihilates the NES ones that came before it. But Castlevania 1 and 3 are really good games.
They
as
are,
well.
absolutely.
They are, but
But this
yeah,
is
no.
pod.
They're much stiffer because of the console that they're on.
I mean, I'd say like 4 is still incredibly stiff, but you get that extra range of motion with the whip that makes it feel so much more fluid. Because you could do the woo, swirl it around.
It gives you a lot more. You still have the same tools, but it gives you a lot more options with them. Just being able to whip at angles is a big deal.
It's not that really bad.
Compared to the very
perfect.
stiff for the first one.
Yeah, and when you get hit, still to that weird, like you get hit and you're like,
You fly back.
Go back.
You better not be too close to a ledge in the Medusa level, right? Like,
Oh God, yeah. But it's still a good challenge. It's a great game. It was one of the ones that was like on my cusp of ones to bring up. So I thought Greg might also want to talk about it. So I'm glad that happened.
oh yeah, for sure. It was on my list too because I got that for I want to say it was my 9th or 10th birthday. It was like right after the Super Nintendo came out. It was one of the earliest games I got for the Super Nintendo. And Joey actually would have hung out with me that very day because we went to like Roy Beinfest's, I probably shouldn't say his full name, his birthday party, like Kyle Shulo's party on this, because we have the same birthday. And I remember I was just annoyed because all I wanted to do was play Super Castlevania 4. Such a good game.
I love it.
But that game, so I mentioned that like you couldn't say anything bad about it. That game drives me up a wall when I go to play the original cartridge. Because if you remember those old early Konami Super Nintendo games take like a good 15 seconds to load. So it's like something's wrong with your Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it always
every other game snaps on.
Yeah.
And
it always throws me off when we have to test games at the store. I'm like, is this one broken? And I'm like, oh, okay, there it goes. Like,
yeah, it's the worst one to pick to test the system, and it always makes me wonder, like, if it's the game or the system.
console.
Like,
yeah.
did I wait long enough? Or anyway, I just wanted to shit on it just a little bit.
So, Katie, what's another one of your favorites there?
Well, actually, I have a pretty good story about this one.
All right. Well, we're in a format where stories are encouraged.
It all started back when
Picture
Picture
this.
this.
Paint me a word
Uh,
picture.
Young Katie, 5 years old. Something, I don't know how old I was.
4 3/4.
Anyway,
You are an age.
I was an age. I asked my mom to go to Blockbuster because I really wanted to rent Link to the Past. That was what I was into at the time. She comes home and says that A Link to the Past wasn't available. Somebody else had rented it. But she had Super Mario RPG instead and said, I know that you like Mario, so I saw this one and picked it up instead since they didn't have Zelda. And let's just say it's pretty much number 2 on my list as favorites of all time. It's still to this day. It's still like my second favorite game.
I feel like everybody fell into that game. I don't think anybody went to that game thinking it's going to be good, and then everybody played it. Was like, what the hell? This is amazing.
Yeah, but it was like, I think what was so amazing about it was that it had that atmosphere of both Mario and Final Fantasy, and it was like the perfect combination of the two.
The only reason I played that game was because I saw Square had a hand in it, somewhere, and like that's the only reason I even tried it.
So
It's the only
It's
RPG
incredible.
that I've ever played.
It's a great
yeah,
game.
and if you've only
It's
played
so
one, that's good. My experience with that game, I never heard of it. I was at one of my friend's house, and this is after like the N64's out, and he or his sister or someone was just kind of playing it. I think it was like we're at the tail end of like a birthday party or something. And he's like, I'm like, what the heck is this game? Because I'd never seen a Mario game that like looked the way it did, where it was like kind of Donkey Kong Country-esque, where it's like kind of pre-rendered-y.
Yeah, I was going to mention
I
that.
thought it was creepy at first. Honestly,
looks-
I
when
did
looked at the
too.
game on,
It looks
I was like,
like claymation-y.
yeah, I was like,
hated it.
what is
I
this?
hated how it looked in pictures.
But I
before
think it
came
might
out.
have been the first time I ever saw like an RPG like that being played. I'm like, oh, why? This looks boring. You have to wait all these turns to do things. But after the Wii came out, my former college roommate, because you could send each other games on there, and that was on the Virtual Console, and that was one of his favorites. So he sent me that, and I had sent him Ocarina of Time because that was one of my favorites that he had never played. So that's the first time I played it, and I loved it, and it was great. And then I got into the Paper Mario series, and I never thought about it again.
It's
Yeah, that's not true, but like it is a great start for a weird subgenre of Mario games that should not work, like you said.
Yeah, it shouldn't
Very
work,
solid.
and yet it does. Like like I said, I remember seeing pictures of it and thinking like, it's an RPG,
Yeah.
and it looks like muddy, and like
Yeah.
I remember not being excited for it at all, and like it looked not quite right for me. I don't know. There was something about it, and then Joe, I don't remember who got it. Was it you or did we rent it? But you and I played through a majority of that game. I think it was on your copy then that we played at my house a lot that one summer. I think it was 8th grade that it came out. And it was just so engrossing, right? Like it was just
It was
there
funny.
was so much.
It
It was a
was
huge world. There was so much to discover. Secrets literally everywhere. That
Bowser
weird
was amazing.
Yeah.
Like him as a character, like being able to have Bowser on your team. I remember seeing that and I was like, what? Like, is that a real thing? And then when I got to that point in the game, my mind was blown because Bowser was my favorite villain of all time. So I was like, Bowser's my friend! Like, my mind was blown as a little kid, but I loved it. I loved everything.
That game for me, like I didn't like the look of the game. I didn't really like the music that much, but the gameplay was spot on. Like it was so cool how you could do those extra attacks and like
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
and that's what really grabbed me was the gameplay, and the story was good too. But like just even the look at the time, like I said, it looked kind of muddy. And like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the music, but that being said, fantastic game and a top 5 RPG of all time. Like
Yeah, it's such a fun game.
I like the simplicity of it.
yeah,
Honestly.
absolutely.
I think it's a perfect game to give someone who has never played an RPG or doesn't really want to get to
Yeah, it's very accessible.
far into it.
It's Mario, like everyone's already familiar
Yeah.
with the world and how it works.
That's why I played it. I think it's the only reason that got me in. It was
If it came
was
out
in that
earlier,
universe.
if it came out earlier in the Super Nintendo's life cycle, RPGs may have picked. Maybe that's put a little more importance on them. RPGs might have picked up a little bit more steam in the U.S.
I was gonna say, you know, you want an entry point for RPGs like Mystic Quest. Like if Square was looking to do that, this would have been that game. Obviously, this was. It's super late. I
it's
want
like
to
one
say
of the
it came out
last-
Way
in
at the end of its
96,
life cycle.
97.
Yeah.
It might have been later than that. I'm looking now at all the. I have to go backwards through all the pictures. Yeah, 1996. Because yeah, Joe and I had just graduated 8th grade around the time that game came out, and that was a year after the PlayStation launched. You know, like there was a whole new. It was more than a year after the Saturn had launched. Like there was a whole new generation coming. Oh wait, forget all that. That was the fall that the N64 came out. So like in the same year, like that system was basically done, and this phenomenal game came out, and that's
like they were already working on Mario 64 before Mario RPG was even released.
Yeah.
So, like
Yeah,
there
well, they
was
would have to
overlap there. It's weird.
But it was like one of those games that shouldn't have worked in any way, especially after a lot of like some pretty bad third-party Mario titles
Yeah.
during the Super Nintendo's life. When like another like Square at the time was just gold, so obviously it wasn't going to be bad. Like Mario Teaches Typing, not Mario Teaches Typing. I'm sorry. That's how my daughter's learning how to type right now. And I meant to say Mario is missing.
Mario's
the-
Time Machine.
Mario's Time Machine. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but it was just so good. It was better than good. It was phenomenal. It was just.
It's still one of I go back. That's one of my like I go back and play it every year and just play through it.
Weren't you trying to speedrun it at one point?
I was.
How's your time on that?
Way to call her out on that, Scott.
Yeah. All right.
That was.
Listen,
there was no time on that.
Listen, I watched you set the world record on Aladdin for Super Nintendo.
What?
I was in the stream for that. Well, set
Wait,
a
what?
record. Didn't you
Yeah.
beat like some record?
I
couple
got
years
like
ago?
I got halfway up the leaderboard, and then Aladdin got insanely popular in the speedrunning community, and now I'm like number 47.
All right.
But I was
know
like number 15. Like I was up
I know
there.
you were up there, and you were streaming, and I watched that.
Yeah.
I thought
And
that
then
was
like
really cool.
I think it was last year. It was on some kind of marathon, whether it was like Games Done Quick or ESA or one of them. And then next thing I know, I go on to speedrun.com, and the leaderboard for Aladdin went from like this long to like it was just so many people.
They
But
also
that's-
released on Switch. Did it release last year on Switch? They did that Disney
Oh
collection.
yeah,
where
yeah,
it was
that with Lion King, right?
Lion King and Aladdin.
It's the
and-
Genesis versions, I
It's the
believe.
Genesis.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
The
talking-
Super Nintendo one is different.
they
Yeah.
can't
This version's
re-release
better.
they can't re-release the Super Nintendo version because it technically belongs to Capcom. But I think
Yeah.
that Capcom also doesn't have the rights to that game anymore because it's Disney.
Yeah.
So
There's
But-
a fascinating story about the development of those games. I'll have to look it up and maybe we could like post it with the episode later. But there's a podcast about this I listened to a while back that was just actually no, it wasn't a podcast. It's a video series. The Double Fine puts out. I just remembered it.
Okay.
So the studio that does Psychonauts and a bunch of other games for PC.
Double
and-
Fine?
I love
Yeah, Double Fine.
Yeah.
So they've done. I'm trying to think of some like notable type. Full Throttle.
Brutal Legend,
Brutal Legend.
Grim Fandango.
Right. So anyway, there's a video series that they did where they talked to developer friends and like developer stories making classic games, and they talked to one of the developers that was responsible for those old Disney video games that were surprisingly good, and they
They
talked
were
about.
so good.
I won't get into it because obviously I can't like do it justice, but it's well worth the watch. Because it's absolutely fascinating that the fact there were two completely different versions and the way these the teams had to make these games. And it's super cool and interesting. So give it a
That's
listen.
really cool. I love was actually going to be one of my like I know we talked about like underappreciated games, but
Mhm.
I was going to mention the Super Nintendo Capcom Disney games specifically because well, I grew up playing them. I was a huge Disney nerd growing
Yeah.
up.
Hey,
Still am.
I have one of them on my list to talk about as unappreciated games, but I'll wait.
Oh,
really?
Until you're done.
That might be a good segue. Just like
Yeah, if we wanna
roll
go
right
into
I was
into
gonna
it.
say, well, I mean,
Yeah.
the only ones I was
So
going to mention
we'll
was,
keep talking about Aladdin if you want.
yeah, like Aladdin and the Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. I think is the
Oh,
one. Yeah.
that's a fun game. The Mickey Mouse games they had.
It's so much fun. Like I think that one, and then there's another one with Donald, but I don't know if that's
Maui Mallard. I think I know that was released on or
that was Genesis.
that was Genesis
No.
at least, right?
Yeah, that was Maui Mallard was Genesis. I think Quackshot.
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 That was
There's
Genesis
only-
also, quack shot.
See, I had a Genesis, so but there was a download. I don't remember what it is.
There is one. I can't remember what the name is.
But anyway, the Disney one I wanted to bring up was Goof Troop.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
A great
That's
co-op.
hilarious.
It's a co-op game. A co-op
Yes,
like
it is.
puzzle
It's
adventure
like-
game. Yeah, it's one of the few games that at the time like you could play together that wasn't a beat 'em up and it wasn't a fighting game and it
Mhm.
wasn't
Called a
like
kicking
Mario.
cube game.
Yeah. Well,
Pickle Cubicle.
it's a lot of fun.
Cubicle. That's it.
Yeah.
Adventures of Lolo.
I love that. Oh my god.
Kick
Amazing
and
game.
push block. Push block game.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to complain about that too much because a lot of Zelda games have a lot of that. But yeah, that was gonna be one of the ones I wanted. That was one of the ones I wanted to bring up because it's a
You're solid.
yeah, especially if it's a good brother little brother kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, I had a little brother and like there's not a lot of 2-player games are like competitive, but this one you can kind of like I could carry my younger brother in
Yeah.
it like a little bit. But yeah, that
Perfect teaching your little brother how to play games, kind of.
and then if he dies in it, you can still beat the level.
Yeah.
So
As he dies.
If he dies.
you don't have to do the thing where you enter your controller that's not plugged in.
Ivan Drago. I want to play Super Nintendo co-op games with Ivan Drago.
Yeah.
If he
Not
dies.
Pocky Rocky, Mystical Ninja, right? That has Pocky Rocky also, but
Brilliant.
I call Pocky.
He would be killer in combat basketball, I think.
yes.
Why isn't that game called Come Basketball?
Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
That's a free idea out there for indie game developers.
Yeah, let's
Go
go
ahead,
back to
Bill
that one.
Lambier.
Hey, we did Shaq Fu. We went back to that well. So
Yeah.
someone else can
Yeah,
revive Bill
but
Lambier.
it's Shaquille O'Neal or Bill Lambier.
I think
Who
there's
is Bill Lambier?
Exactly.
The Pistons, come on.
I
Joe
know who
I'm
he is.
sorry, I
You know
don't know
basketball,
sports.
Joe.
I know who he is. He was a center on the
That's why you guys aren't our sports episodes.
Oh
no
man.
else.
But I was geez, I just totally blanked on what I was going to say. Carry on. Ignore me.
We'll circle back to you, Greg. What's one of your underappreciated ones?
No,
I think it's one
I
of the
was
ones I
thinking
want to bring up too.
Earlier, before we were on the thing, I had a couple of games I brought up that I actually had that I thought were underrated, underappreciated. But I'm gonna change that. The two games
okay.
I was gonna bring up
Curveball.
was Metal Marines. It's like an old RTS for Super Nintendo. Really cool game. You can play as Metal Marines. Like part of the things you build your levels up, and your big weapon was the Metal Marine, even though it was a Gundam technically. They just called it Metal
Nice.
Marines in this game. But since the game is pretty rare and not many people know about it, this game will be underappreciated if it's kind of rare like that. I was also going to bring up King of Dragons, which I think was a cool beat 'em up game. But the game I really think that's underappreciated, and this is the reason why, is once I tell you the game, is ActRaiser.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that's on my list too.
The reason why I think it's underappreciated is because they made a sequel and took everything good out of the game. Like the whole, if you don't want, let me go back. ActRaiser, there's two parts of the game. There was an action part, and then there was a world building, like SimCity style part. But you play as a little cherub and you killed these little monsters and you built this town. You found things. Part of the game was doing that, and then you would find like the evil in the land and go down and you would play as God, and then you would beat the boss and yada yada. When they did the sequel, they took out the whole like farming, RPG-esque part out of it. My guess is because they thought it would sell better, not having that part to it. But the reason why people love that game so much is the whole building simulation part of that game. It flowed so well together, and that's why I think actors are underrated.
And both parts of that feed into each other. Like the stuff you do in the overworld, like there's things you can miss. But like as you build up your because you play as God of this world, so in that part you're like assistant angel, which is just a sense that it's just an excuse to have a cursor on the screen.
Yeah, the naked cherub.
But like you have to rebuild their society, and there's things that like people will do for you if you rebuild them well, that will help give you like boosts and things in the side-scrolling action parts. Which those parts are also awesome to play.
You have that big sword that you hold up.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're going to swing a bat.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
It's so
you
satisfying.
swing it like an axe.
And
Yeah.
the music's fantastic, like I said.
Music's great, yeah.
But yeah,
That's
that's
something
what
that's true in like a lot of these Super Nintendo games that we're talking about. Is like we comment on how great the soundtracks are
Oh,
because
yeah.
they really were. Like they were really awesomely composed, interesting songs for these games, and they did so much lifting as far as setting the tone, right?
Definitely.
Created atmosphere in these relatively low fidelity games with these soundtracks. They were, to this day, we're still like remixing and re-recording, playing live, and listening to on Spotify. Like they're just really great. It's great music.
I mean, they still use them in games today. In Breath of the Wild, when you go to Hyrule Castle, they mix in the Hyrule Castle theme from Link to the Past in it.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like these things still, the soundtracks alone still resonate. And we're definitely gonna have to do an episode where we talk about gaming soundtracks because there's so much.
You need to be on this one.
There's so much good stuff. Well, you actually go to concerts for like gaming, like music and stuff.
Like no, it's video game music has been a huge part of my life. I mean, like back in, I know that we're getting off topic, but like back in, like when I was a kid, when you can burn CDs, I was burning video game soundtracks onto CDs.
Yeah.
Just so I could have them. Like that's
Absolutely.
So I can remember Mega Man X being, I had the entire discography, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The discography.
The discography.
We'll go on the Wikipedia page for the discography of Mega Man X.
Well, Joey, what's one of your underappreciated or underrepresented?
I mean, I need
some of those things.
I mean, Super Tennis,
Yeah.
all that good stuff. But no,
Bubsy 2, Return of the Wolves,
Bubsy
whatever it's
2.
called. Yeah.
For me,
back.
I would be it'd be wrong of me if I didn't make this long-running joke first of the PPG family of the Super Nintendo having an amazing back catalog that is so large and robust you get lost in it.
It's very true. It's
Which
very
is true.
large,
There's
very
a lot of
very
games you can get
robust.
lost in, but I'm going to talk about there's 3 of them. There's 3 games,
All right.
but there's one in particular that has a deep connection with myself and Sean. For me, they're not, I think, the greatest games in the world, but for 2 kids that love Star Wars growing up, this was it. These games were it. So I'm going to talk about Super Empire
Wait, I
Strikes
should have
Back.
done like.
That's scrolling.
Yeah, you got to do it like that. There you go.
Pretend I did it the first time like that.
So hard. So hard.
Super Empire Strikes Back for us has a connection. It was one Christmas, and back in the day when there wasn't the internet, so I couldn't send messages, couldn't text, couldn't take pictures, couldn't do anything.
We're very old.
Yes.
Yeah, we're old.
This game came out, and we both wanted it really bad. And our local video game store, Stop and Go Video,
Oh my god.
had it one day, and I was gonna go rent it, and it was right before Christmas, and I've been trying to get it all of the time. I've been running there all of the time to get it, and it was never in.
You'd
And it
go
was
like
in
every
because-
day to see if the game was in, you know.
And it was in because it was around Christmas, and we were off so I could get it.
Mhm.
But my parents were like, no, you're not allowed. So I got it for Christmas that year, and it was one of those, like, I think I got it on Christmas Eve because we were allowed to open, like,
Did.
2 different, like, presents. I was allowed to get, like, I got my Christmas pajamas, which are traditional Christmas Eve gift, and then I got 1 gift to open because my dad works in the morning, whatever.
Yeah.
And
My
I
family has
opened
a similar tradition.
and it was Super Empire Strikes Back, and I remember losing my shit as much as I could at that age.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a kid, and what do? You want to tell your friend. What did I have to do? Pick up the phone.
Yeah, you have to.
Pop, 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 boop,
What's a
and
phone?
call.
So you had to remember the phone number.
Hello,
Yeah,
is Shot there?
yeah.
Oh my
And
god.
then talk
Yeah,
to either, like,
Shot.
your mom or grandparents, and then, like, you won't believe what I got. I got a Super Empire, and he got
And
Super
I
Empire
did.
Strikes Back too.
Because we also had that tradition of opening at least 1 game. And I specifically knew that it was most like the, you know,
That's
the
shape.
box.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
right? Like that you could feel it. It's that size. And like I knew it was going to be Super Empire Strikes Back, and I was like Joe, like just dying to play this game. I was so hungry for it because you start with the lightsaber in Super Star Wars. You have to earn the lightsaber after like a few levels, You got to go find Obi-Wan first. And then this one, you just start with it, and you get force powers. So it was going to be better.
I remember getting it
so
and it being tough for me, at least, especially when she had to get on like the snow speeder, and like your snow speeder is like the majority of the screen, and you're getting hit.
It's kind of the opposite of what we were saying about Mega Man X, where the world is built for the movements that you're capable of doing. Super Empire Strikes Back in particular, but all of the Super Star Wars games are like, what if you couldn't see where you were jumping?
Yeah, it's a lot of that.
What if
your
you
character sprite
couldn't
was
see what was
50%
shooting
screen?
you? And you have to, like, a lot of stages that are tall, especially like the first stage is Hoth, and there are like sections that are like spike pits, and if you fall in them, you're dead. But sometimes you can just go down there.
Yeah.
But you don't know because you can't see how far down. And like, it's the game design's rough. I went back to it fairly recently to play it, and I was so bad at it. Like, I could get pretty far into it as a kid, and I couldn't get to the Wampa, which is the first one.
Thank goodness for the Game Genie.
Yeah.
I cheated through that game. This one had
Unlimited
passwords
force.
too.
Unlimited lives.
I had to do that for
Detonator. I put it all in.
I had to do that for Shadows of the Empire.
Yes, that had great cheat codes though.
Yeah,
I had like the ones that were like Wampa Stompa was one.
Yeah, I used Wampa Stompa a lot. I forget what it did.
I think it was all power ups.
Yeah, I think it was that because I remember using that to cheat through stuff. But anyway, what we're talking about, while we're on the subject of this, one of the games I want to bring up. So like I said, I didn't have one of these growing up, but I knew lots of people who did. And one of my neighbors had a game. Every time I'd go over his house, I'd play it. But it's The Simpsons Bart's Nightmare.
Oh God, that game is so fucking frustrating.
No,
my God.
I kind of love it.
It's one of the hardest games I've ever played.
Yeah, I can beat most of the stages in it. Yeah. Once you get, but again, I played a lot of it growing up. But yeah, I know a lot of it's nostalgia talking, but I do think it's a fun game. It's definitely the worst game we've talked about this entire episode.
Yes.
Bill Lambert's Combat Basketball.
Yeah.
Super Dennis.
That might.
But I don't know. I really like Bart's Nightmare. You get a lot of different types of games in it.
Yeah.
Because the whole game is just a series of, like, essentially mini games, more or less.
Yeah.
But
I remember loving the concept of it, and graphically, it's like really good looking. Like they nail the Simpsons style.
The digitized voice sounds like The Simpsons in it,
But man, that game has the germ one, right? Where you're like the Bart germ, and you can get killed. Yeah,
when it's basically like vertical shooter Dig Dug. You have to pump them up and explode them.
Yeah. Oh my God. And the Raiders of the Lost Ark tile puzzle that you have to jump across the floor,
which is near impossible.
Yeah. The baby level, the music's still in my brain. I can hear it.
Same.
The baby level's in a virtual Bart.
Am I getting that wrong? Oh yeah,
which is a different game.
Is the one where you have to get the grades.
Yeah.
So how you do on the level is the grade.
The best level is the Bartman level. I love that one. Where you're flying around with swing slot shooting stuff. There's the one where you play as Bartzilla. It's a Godzilla thing. There's the Indiana Jones one. There's the germ one where you're pumping up the germs. There's two more that I'm not remembering. But I also had Bart's Name. Bart's Nightmare was the one I owned as a kid. I had it for Genesis. And I've beaten that game too. And I would say it's...
You mean Virtual Bart?
Yeah, Virtual Bart. Yeah, sorry. But they're comparable. You can have fun in them, but they're not things you're going to last with you.
This is the best Simpsons game on Super Nintendo was Krusty's Funhouse, though.
Wow.
That game is a hidden gem. I think it is a really fun game, and I remember it's Lemmings.
Lemmings,
right?
yeah.
It is. Mm-hmm.
But it is really fun. It is that's a brutally difficult game too.
It's brutal, but I hate the other ones. They're just, I can't. I would rent them thinking I could do something. I thought I was stupid. I couldn't play these games. They're just hard.
Yeah. The games so the NES had NES hard because they were still very much inspired by the arcade designs. Super Nintendo was getting away from it more, but some games are really hard on it. Like the Super Star Wars games are extremely difficult, in my
They're
opinion.
unforgiving.
Yeah,
Like, unnecessarily punishing.
Yeah, in my opinion, that ruins the games for me.
And
there's
Return's about the easiest one, and that
Yeah.
still has. It's still tough.
I haven't talked about my. I don't want to cut you off. Are you done?
No. Yeah, I was going to move on to the next thing.
I haven't. I won't spend a lot of time talking about it, but Addams Family is one of those games that it's a licensed game. It does not look appealing because it's just like it came out around the same time as the movie did with Raul Julia and Angelica Houston, which was great. But like, it's just like a screenshot or it's the poster for the movie on the box art, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's nothing really that seems like it's going to be good. But it's actually essentially a Metroidvania game. But not in the same sense that you keep your power-ups. Your power-ups are temporary. You can lose them on death. But the whole house, you play in the Addams Family house. There's a kind of a hub in the house itself. And control where you can move to different parts of it and like get different things that'll unlock other areas. You have to go around and beat all the bosses of each section. I think the premise is that you've been kicked out of your house, you're Gomez, and you have to get the house back by it's like loosely tied into the movie plot. But unlike most movie tie-in games, it's actually really inventive and fun. And there's a lot of problems with it. Like, the controls are super loose. You just like slide around, you fly around the stage. Like, there's a power-up you can get that's running shoes, and you move way too fast to control it. Like, it's almost unplayable. But it's so much fun and weird and like a million different little secrets and like shortcuts. And I remember going back and replaying this game like early on when Greg and I opened the store, just like when it was slow, and we would like pick a random game out of the cabinet and mess around with it, and just getting sucked back into it and actually playing through the entire game one day, much to Greg's dismay. Like, I did no work. I just played Addams Family with Mario. And
I remember those days. They were interesting times.
And we beat it. And I just remember, like, man, there's so much going on in this damn game. It is really neat. I forgot how it just keeps going. Like, it's not great. And the music's not good, and the graphics are pretty janky because it was one of those games that was on every console. Like, there was a Genesis port, there was I think there might have been a Master System version. There was like a Commodore 6. Anyway, and it was from Ocean, who didn't develop like consistently good games. Like, they had some hits here and there, but most of the time they were like movie tie-ins. Like,
they were notoriously like.
Yes, Ocean has a bad reputation.
Right.
They're the European LJN in a way.
Yes. They did.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, which was just awful and frustrating.
Yeah, when I was looking up underrated gems, every one of them had that Jurassic Park game, and I'm like, why? It was bad.
I own that. That's one of the few games.
I had the NES version, so I had an even worse one.
That one's really bad. But the SNES one had Doom segments where you could use the mouse to control it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had like to put down the controller, which made it like but that was a weird game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention Addams Family because it's like no one's going to see that on a shelf without knowing that it's interesting and like ever give it a second glance. But it's well worth a pickup.
I saw that movie for the first time last year.
What? Oh,
Because
we were at Harry's house, right?
Yeah, we were at Harry's house because we got the pinball machine, and everyone was talking about Addams Family. I was like, I never got around to watching that movie.
Oh my god!
It was like
so
inescapable when we were kids. I really liked it.
It was great.
Yeah,
I love Raul Julia. So.
I think it holds up. And then I went and watched some of the old original Addams Family show on, I think it was on Amazon or Hulu or something. And I'm like, this movie is way better.
Yeah, the movie actually was like a.
Yeah.
It was, the 90s had that trend of like, let's go back and do TV shows from the 50s and 60s and make them a live action. Like the Flintstones got that.
Like Brady Bunch and Beverly Hills.
Their movie, and that was one that probably shouldn't have worked at all.
No, has no reason to be as good as it is.
Christopher Lloyd is
as Uncle Fester.
All right, yeah. Let's side start a podcast about the Addams Family too while we're at it.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting to bring up. But yeah, it's also a good way to plug that. Hey, we've got that. You can play that at our store, the pinball game.
Right.
But yeah, if there's anything else you guys want to bring up, I think we can start wrapping this up. The goal is always to be an hour, and we always go way long. So,
How
How
It's
can
like
you
two.
keep the Super Nintendo to an hour? It's impossible.
Yeah.
There's so many games we haven't mentioned. So many.
Oh my god, yeah.
There was a couple of games I was debating on bringing up, but because of like price and rarity, I was
Let's
hesitant
hold
to.
down for a part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we should.
Yeah.
We could always come back to it because I wanted to talk about like this was the first instance of like actually paying attention to what Japan got and wanting
Yeah.
the Japanese games and like
Yeah.
imported games and like the whole scene around imports really blew up around that. Like you could talk about that forever. So I mean, we briefly touched about the pre-rendered, like
Mhm.
you know.
Oh yeah,
towards
we
the
haven't
end
even
of
talked
the
about
life
Donkey
cycle.
Kong. Like,
Right, there's so much more you could talk about, but I think
yeah, because
we probably made people
yeah,
thoroughly sick of hearing us.
yeah.
blast
Well,
themselves
I
about
will
it.
change up. We'll probably change up the lineup a little bit for a little inside baseball. I was trying to get, if you watched the Ninja Turtles episode, I was trying to get Chris Randazzo to come back for us for this episode specifically because
Yeah, he's a
he-
hard cat.
well he also literally wrote the book on Super Nintendo. He's one of the contributors to the SNES Omnibus, where they detail every single Super Nintendo game released in the United States.
Yeah, we got to get him on here.
Yeah, so
Is he going to tell us how wrong we were about all the things we thought we remembered?
Oh,
And you're wrong about this, and you're wrong about this.
well, I hope he
Talk
watches
about
this and puts
Super
it in.
tennis and
Yeah,
Dolan and beer.
I hope he
Really?
watches this and puts it in the comments for this video and wherever the podcast is, because that's good for our engagement algorithm.
Yeah, Chris,
Bro,
tell us
he's
how
not
we're
good.
wrong.
Feed the algorithm.
But yeah, obviously, I always say, well, you know, even if, because I have a lot of friends we have that want to come on the show that like would work for various topics, but just for logistics sake, we can't have everyone on at once. So I'm always willing to circle back. There's so much more we could talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
With just the broad term of Super Nintendo, you know,
Right.
that we'll definitely come back to it.
Let's do a yearly breakdown of Super Nintendo from here.
We joked in the last episode about Deep Space Nine that we're gonna have to come back like every other month and talk about each season specifically of the show, which is fine because I have tons of Star Trek fans who have not been on the two of the 10 episodes that we talked about Star Trek with yet.
Oh my God, you guys.
I haven't even had Becca on yet, but
It's okay. Listen, it's okay to like something. It doesn't mean that you have to pattern your entire life around how much you love that thing
yeah.
that you like
Yes.
as much as you do. You could talk about other things other than
Trying to find something.
And if you're not watching, I'm holding up Evangelion stuff because I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by Evangelion.
I mean,
had to-
none
I
of us.
just have a Mac tonight class. That's all.
I mean, none of us can talk about anything considering what business you guys decided to form, and that we
right now we
yeah.
Hold on. Here we go.
we're
Also-
like, well,
We're like
I
Voltron.
really
Katie. That's
Also,
so
when you
good.
get up, there's the helmet, and then you can
Yes.
see that.
Oh
and then-
yeah, there it is. Rush, and I saw the poster earlier,
Yeah.
but
A
anyway,
little.
I also have 3 busters, just so you guys know.
Well, say, how many helmets do you have now?
Just the
Just the
one.
one.
Just the one helmet.
Just the one.
I don't
those are
get-
rookie numbers, Katie.
No,
Yeah, you pump those
listen.
numbers up.
My one shelf over here is literally all Mega Man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all Mega Man.
I have this. This isn't to hide a mess. It's to hide my shame. Of
But
look at all of that.
There it is.
From one of Harry's podcasts, from Hailing Frequencies, all my ships.
Oh
I
yeah,
electric ships behind you. Yeah.
that's
Well,
right.
I know there's been a couple people have talked to me about episodes they want to do, and then I'll find an excuse for that. And some of those episodes have some mega fans that we know, and I'm not going to name names just yet.
I can't wait.
Yeah, Sean, you're going to be on one of them if I can. I want to do an episode where we compare the Star Wars trilogies, because you're going to be my more general Star Wars fan, I think, of the bunch.
I am a better. I would say, like, just not to toot my own horn, I am probably a more well-adjusted Star Wars fan than your average Star
Oh,
Wars fan. No offense to the Star Wars fans
Yeah.
Oh,
out
that's
there,
fair.
but
That's
it
fair.
is a very toxic community sometimes.
Yes,
And
it
I'm
is.
like, I feel like
oh, I
Like on
can.
the
Yeah,
better
yeah,
end,
yeah.
shouldn't I?
I know. Listen, I love when people come in and talk to us about stuff.
All right, let's wrap this up. We can talk about this off the air.
We'll talk about this off the air. But yeah. So I think that's gonna do it for this episode for us. Joe and Katie, where can we find you guys on this wide world?
In our house.
Well, I hope people are finding you there.
You mean like social media wise?
Social media, and you guys do a pretty regular thing on the internet. I figured you might want to plug.
Go ahead.
That's called a softball, guys. You
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
Oh,
go.
yeah.
From Baseball
Well, like I
Simulator.
talked about in the baseball podcast, we're part of a streaming group on Twitch called Poorly Played Games. We're all kind of in flux with everything going on with new jobs and this and that, but you can follow us on there.
What's the link?
Poorly Played
Oh.
Games on Twitch. You just go to Twitch, type in Poorly Played Games, and then it'll pull you up to the page. Hit that follow button, and you'll see when we go live. We'll play everything.
Smash that like and
Smash that
subscribe. Just
Yeah.
get
And
in there.
like
and-
button.
Whoa now, calm down.
You can cut that out.
We'll play all sorts of stuff. All the games we probably talked about retro-wise here today, we'll probably play or have played.
Yeah.
Not Super Tennis though. We haven't gotten to
So
that.
I know you play a lot of Binding of Isaac on there.
But
Usually,
yeah,
right?
that's-
Yeah.
where you can find us.
Obviously, the rest of us, Love Up Entertainment, comic book video game store, just general nerditries. We're in the Hamilton Mall in Mays Landing, New Jersey. We have a website, levelupentertainment.com. We're that on every form of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Live journal.
I think we still have a Tumblr. I don't think we've logged into it in forever.
Yeah, we're gonna pretend like we just lost the password for that one. I think.
I don't think that's a stretch. I couldn't figure. I don't think I could
It's possible.
if I tried to log into it.
What are you logging into?
But right now, a couple of things we got going on. We're still got free comic book summer, so every Wednesday until September 5th, we get new books that were for free comic book day. Obviously, that got canceled due to the quarantine going into effect.
There's a quarantine?
Oh, Greg.
Yeah.
See, Greg has a new baby, and he's a little bit removed from reality. But we'll talk after this. I have some.
Yeah,
I have some
we'll
bad
catch him up.
news.
So there's new free books every week, and if you order anything on our online store and just in the notes remind us that you want some, we'll give them to you. We also have this August, which is when this episode's coming out. Hey, it's our 13th birthday this
Yay!
so usually we oh sorry.
Someone's gonna go.
I was just gonna say, as typical teenager, we're all grounded. That's why we're not allowed to be there all at once.
Yeah. So
I was gonna go with the
Good
puberty
answer.
joke, but I like
Yeah.
that one.
So,
It's a
but
little more
usually
We're all going through some changes.
Usually we do a big event in store with like cake and all kinds of fun activities to do. This year, my plan was like, all right, we're turning 13 next year. We're going to make it a bar mitzvah. Sweet 16.
Today you are a store.
Yeah, exactly. We've become a business. We're no longer a limited liability company. We're a full liability company. But
Well played.
but
I love
obviously,
that.
obviously because of coronavirus, we don't want to encourage a lot of big congregations and stuff. Obviously, we are open, so you can come in and pick things up. But I wouldn't want to. We're not. Well, we're also not allowed to have a big gathering.
We can't give you
events.
cake anymore. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
and even if we could,
Yeah.
like, I probably wouldn't want it. But
I
anyway,
would come on into our store and eat cake that's been
We're-
sitting out for hours. It's
we're-
okay, guys.
we're doing a lot of online.
Totally safe.
We're doing a lot of online events for it. Right now, we're receiving, and I've been posting. We reached out to every guest that's ever been to any of our events, and they're sending us little birthday wishes videos. If you have one you would like to send to us, just send it to contact@levelupentertainment.com. Obviously, as long as it's appropriate to post, I will post it. But yeah, you can link to, let me know what your social media handles and stuff are on that, and I'll make sure you get shout outs on that, and we're posting at least one of those a day for the foreseeable future. We're going to do a scavenger hunt on our web store. I haven't had the details posted yet. They may or may not be up when this goes up. We're going to do different birthday giveaway weekends online. We're going to be doing a very special edition of this podcast at the end of the month. We're going to be doing a Level Up retrospective. I'm going to have Sean and Greg returning.
Oh, I wasn't invited to this one.
You have been very much invited. I've talked to everyone. We're gonna have some surprises, but what I want to do with that one is I want you guys to submit us questions you have for the store. I would
That's
love
good.
to, see what you guys want to know about, some of our various escapades over these 13 years. But we're also going to share a lot of stories. We have a lot of interesting things to talk about that we've done and experienced.
Like exactly how many cartridges I've licked over the years.
Yes, and how many?
The answer will surprise you.
Yes.
The answer may shock you.
If that's not a hook, I don't know what is.
But yeah,
Parts I've licked. The Sean Rothwell experience.
I say he stopped with the switch. That's why they made them taste so gross.
Yeah, they're like, we gotta stop this. This guy's out of control.
This is a bridge too far.
You get this guy on Twitter. He keeps looking at all the Super Nintendo games. You can't have this guy.
So I don't know if it's obvious to listeners, but we're recording this pretty late, so we're all getting a little slap happy.
So many Super.
But yeah, so,
Basketball.
but yeah, if you guys have any suggestions for future topics you'd like to see us cover, please let us know. Leave either and give us comments on Super Nintendo games you think are your favorites or ones we've missed, or any other kinds of gems you have.
Bubsy.
Tell us how wrong we are and how Bubsy's the best thing that's ever existed.
Bubsy and Shaq Fu for ever.
Yeah, for life.
Bubsy, Bobcat.
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong encouraging people to talk about Bubsy?
I love it. What could possibly go wrong?
I know Wes is always trying to put Bubsy in the TV, and I'm like, Wes, we have Super Mario World. Put things that people will actually buy. Like unironically, like we're saying it.
Don't play Bubsy, guys. If you take fall
Do not
damage,
play
you
Bubsy.
can jump really high. It doesn't make any
Bubsy
sense.
is absolutely terrible.
Terrifying game.
Well, we
The
all
game's
know
like-
the best taste in games.
Yeah. But anyway, again, to finish this off, that'll be it for us tonight. So until next time, everyone, stay safe out there.